continue with the next presentation. It will be presented by Leonora Pepper, and she is from Forest Steward Guild. And what I took from the presentation, from the biography, she trains artisan woodworkers and promotes sustainable forestry in Latin America. So, Leonora, you have all. Where are you?
I'm right here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So your floor is yours, please.
All
Start
right.
with the presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me as a speaker, and hello everyone. Thank you for being here today. So yes, my name is Leonora Pepper, and I live in the southwestern United States, where I work in the forestry field. And I work for an organization called the Forest Stewards Guild. We operate nationwide in the US, practicing and promoting responsible forestry as a means of sustaining the integrity of forest ecosystems and the human communities dependent upon them. So sort of the ecological and social aspects of sustainable forestry. And then I also serve on the board of Greenwood, which, as was mentioned, it trains artisan woodworkers and promotes sustainable forestry in Latin America. So the aspect of my work that
Works.
There we go. So part of my work I'd like to speak about today is our national program at the Forest Stewards Guild. It's called Women Owning Woodlands. We also affectionately call it the WOW program, the acronym. So this program is supported by the USDA Forest Service, state and private forestry. And our goal is to serve women woodland owners with outreach, education, resources, and connections to support them in becoming engaged stewards of their forests. So in this session, I'll first of all make a case for the need for outreach and programs focused specifically on women. And I'll share a little bit about how the WOW program works. I'll also offer a couple of examples of approaches that we've taken to outreach across the country, particularly as we've had to navigate this pandemic over the past year. So first of all, why do we focus on women woodland owners? So in the US, the majority of forest ownerships are owned by two people, most often a man and a woman. And data from our National Woodland Owners Survey shows that women, when they are asked about their land management goals, they often state that they prioritize conserving land and protecting nature, wildlife habitat, and water. We also know that currently many of the resources out there in this country meant to serve landowners have often failed to reach this female audience. So reaching women landowners and supporting them in getting involved with their land will help to ensure the long-term resilience of our forests here, millions of acres of family forests across the US. So while this program that I will be sharing about is specific to the US, I hope that some of the ideas and approaches will be of interest and perhaps applicable across other forest types and land ownership models. Meanwhile, the percentage of family forest ownerships with women as the primary decision maker is growing. So what we're seeing is a growing demographic shift among the primary owners of America's family forests. Women are more likely than men to report having inherited their land, either from a deceased spouse or from parents. So in these situations, they may be suddenly responsible for management decisions that they haven't gotten prior experience making. But regardless of specific circumstances, forestry is often an area that's relatively new and unfamiliar to women landowners. So it's important for us to reach and engage this audience, both for their sake and to make sure that our private forest lands are managed by people who are engaged and knowledgeable about stewardship. So right now, women in the US are not as involved as men in actively managing their land. So this 2017 study that I've been quoting from showed that women are significantly more likely to have taken no management actions on their wooded land in the past 5 years. So why might we see this kind of lack of direct engagement? Here are some of the common hurdles that women often face in venturing into the forest stewardship space. Perhaps they might not know where to start to get information or consulting help, difficulty finding a professional to work with, getting too much information at once, maybe with unfamiliar terminology. Women often have competing demands on their time and energy. They may feel intimidated in what in this country is still mostly a male space. They may be afraid of being talked down to or dismissed, or having a question being perceived as a dumb question. In our workshops, we always start by telling people that there are no stupid questions. So I would ask you to imagine for a moment a woman walking into a saw shop for the first time, looking to purchase a chainsaw. Unless she's done her homework and really come prepared with some basic vocabulary to show that she knows what she's looking for, this can often be a pretty challenging situation. And even professional colleagues of mine have run into just uncomfortable situations in a saw shop specifically. So I shared this scenario a couple months ago with an audience of forestry and extension professionals and asked them to share their thoughts on what might happen in this scenario. So part of our work with WOW is also educating professionals in the forestry field and extension about the need for women-focused programming. So I think for those of us who are pretty comfortable in our field, it can be a helpful exercise to put yourself in the shoes of someone who's just sort of new to the space. So some of the responses to this scenario included that the salesperson might not give her the attention or service a customer would expect. They may act blatantly condescending or disrespectful, or possibly even assume that she hasn't done her research and try to upsell her or sell her equipment that she doesn't need. So part of our work with the Women Owning Woodlands program is to address some of these barriers and work to make forestry and land stewardship into more inviting spaces for women landowners out there. So I'll talk a little bit about how we go about reaching the women woodland owner audience. Through the WOW program, we're looking to address some of the barriers we saw. And it's really about equipping women with the information and resources and helpful connections in order for them to take an engaged role in interacting and caring for their land. So that we hope that the WOW program will, for example, among other things, shed some light on the process of finding a consulting forester or other professional to work with, make management tools more accessible, and also a very important component is building a sense of community between like-minded landowners. So one of the main tenets is to create a welcoming, supportive space in which women landowners can confidently learn and have their questions answered and make connections with other women landowners. Many of the events that we hold have a social component. For example, often we'll hold a woods walk at a landowner's property and pair that with a potluck or a coffee hour to give people the opportunity for informal conversations as well. And that we've seen over the years that that's a very, very important component of keeping people engaged and coming back. It's a real strength of the program. So this quote on the slide is a quote from a workshop evaluation submitted by a participant. And for international folks in the audience, wicked is a slang term that's very particular to the Northeast US. So one of our important tools for reaching the landowner audience is the womenowningwoodlands.net web project. We use the website to bring relevant and accessible forestry information to woodland owners and forest practitioners. So we publish news articles, blog posts, we circulate events happening around the country, as well as we also share personal stories from different women landowners. So, so far I've spoken sort of specifically about how we directly reach landowners, but really what allows us to reach such a broad range of women across the country is the fact that we work with a network of WOW professional leaders. We have over 300 members across approximately 20 states. So these are professionals who engaged directly in women-focused outreach, education, and programming in their respective areas around the country. So this graphic gives you an idea of the scope of our network. And there's real demand and a lot of enthusiasm for what the program offers in a range of geographies and different forest contexts around the country. This here is a group photo from 2017. We held a retreat, I think a 4-day retreat for these professional leaders. So these are the professionals who offer programming in their respective states. And the network itself, it reminded me of Professor Ernst speaking about educators getting together to sort of problem solve during the pandemic. That really struck a chord. We did a lot of this past year. But in general, we work hard to facilitate connections between members of the network. So we hold frequent calls that bring together these leaders from across the country, as well as folks within specific regions, to network and share experiences. Some groups are, have been around for many years and are well established in their programs. Others are just starting out. So we sometimes pair up those groups for sort of a mentorship type connection as well. So last spring, a year ago, when the pandemic really hit this country, we knew that our members everywhere would be facing many of the same challenges as they had to cancel events and shift online. So in late March, we held a virtual meeting between, I think, 30 WOW leaders from across the country to sort of put our heads together and discuss some ideas for moving ahead and continuing to create community and connection even during social distancing. So we called the meeting Reimagining Outreach in an Era of Social Distancing. And since then, we've held these calls every couple of months. They've been very well attended, and they've sort of provided kind of a support group and a platform to share a lot of ideas and experience between groups. So in the same way that we look to build community among women woodland owners, we're also building community among ourselves as women professionals in the network. So I'd like to switch gears for a moment and talk to you about some of what we have been up to this past year, especially as we've had to adapt to the present situation. Yes, I'd like to share this case example of how we've continued to offer chainsaw safety workshops to women during the pandemic. So last spring, we had to cancel a chainsaw safety workshop we had planned for April, but we didn't want to leave the signed up participants without any access to training. So rather than canceling altogether, we worked with our partners to reimagine the workshop, and we ended up offering a virtual workshop on women's chainsaw safety fundamentals. So this was an interactive webinar. It took place over 2 consecutive weekends, and we were very clear that it would not replace an in-person training. So we were very clear that people were not meant to be prepared to start their chainsaws. But it did provide an introduction to basics such as PPE, personal protective equipment, parts of the saw, safe posture for using a saw, the steps to starting a saw, as well as safety planning, sort of having a backup safety plan when you're out in the woods. So meanwhile, we kept monitoring COVID case counts. This was in the Northeast US, and in June, we decided to go ahead and hold an in-person weekend workshop. So here are a couple of photos from that workshop. The photo on the left, that was our only indoor portion, and it was in a big barn with a lot of ventilation, and everyone, sort of hard to see in the photo, but everyone kept their masks on for the duration of the indoor part. So the focus was overwhelmingly on safety. So we worked hard to develop safety protocols, and participants completed health assessments 24 hours prior. And then one of the factors that we weighed when we were thinking of going ahead or not was of social responsibility. So thinking about what were the potential risks associated with not holding the workshop. And it turned out that many of the women who signed up were really at a beginner's level, and they expressed that they were planning to use their chainsaws that summer, no matter what. So we were very happy to be able to provide some basic training. And also to safely offer an in-person workshop at a time when many people at that point hadn't been leaving their houses, and were so grateful to be able to gather safely and learn together. So here are a couple of more photos from the in-person workshop. And this fall, I think for around September, October, the COVID cases were spiking again here. So we again switched back to a virtual format and held an online question and answer for women landowners with chainsaw instructors present to answer their questions. And in general, even long before the pandemic, there's been very high demand for these chainsaw courses among women landowners. The workshops are almost always waitlisted, and organizers get calls from women out of state wanting to know how they can get one offered in their area. So in the past year, other WOW leaders have held workshops in North Carolina, Vermont. Right now I'm working on getting something started where I'm based in the Southwest. And this is just one of the management tools we hope to encourage women landowners to use. Often it's a good way to attract new participants. Often they'll get involved through a chainsaw workshop and end up sort of staying engaged in the network in other ways as well. They might meet other women at a workshop and get tips from them about local consulting foresters who are good to work with. Maybe they get together afterwards to help clean up invasive plants on each other's properties. So this is just one of the approaches that we take to support women in actively engaging with the forest land, woodland that they own. But the more that they are empowered to take an active role in stewarding their land, and the more they're connected with a larger community of women landowners, the more positive impacts I believe we'll see in private land use, sustainability, and forest conservation. So with that, I will wrap up, and I would love to hear your questions or thoughts on any of what I've presented here and how it might relate to where you are located in the world. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much for this fascinating presentation. It's not only in Austria that women need the help of other women to manage the forest. We have some similar, one similar initiative in Austria too, where women are teaching other women, and just to encourage them. And this is really very, very interesting. This is the case all over the world, I suppose. We have no question in the here in the question and answers. So is there somebody from the audience who wants to contribute to this interesting presentation? No, there's none. Thank you very much. Really, I will take this with home because we have this similar initiative, and I will probably, my colleague will get in contact with you to exchange the experience. Thank you very much. Thank you.